Welcome to the deep dive training of the new application Creative Design Experience. Today, we will focus on a very exciting workflow on how to create a car-rim concept from 3D sketching to surface creation. But before following this training, the prerequisites are the application technical discovery video and materials. Make sure to watch them before. Once in Creative Design Experience application, we will start by creating a first rough of a new car rim concept. To do that, use the VNav widget to position yourself in the front view. Create a new layer from the layer panel and name it, for example, rough rim shape. Launch the sketch creation command from the action bar. Edit the plane support orientation in the toolbar to make sure the plane is at the right position to draw on the front view. Make sure to select the Rough Curve tool to draw some pixels for the rim shape researches. We will start by creating the structure of the rim by using a circle primitive in the Creation tool mode. Click and drag on the 3D view to create the desired exterior circle. You define the value in the 3D directly or also change the value afterward through the Object Properties panel. For the first version of the application, we don't have yet the snapping, so you will have to make sure that the circle is well positioned in the center of the 3D scene by changing its origin to 0, 0, 0 value. You are able to create directly a new circle primitive in the 3D and also two others to create the middle of the rim. When it's done, I quit the curve creation command and multi-select the fourth circle with the selection command and Shift key pressed, so I can share the properties of the circle in the panel. For example, change the brush appearance from charcoal to pencil. I then use the transform command in the action bar to start reposition or edit the circle. I switch to object selection filter in the option bar and start with the scaling transformation mode in the toolbar. With the implicit selection, I scale down the circle with Ctrl and Alt pressed. And I don't even have to select the circle itself, just to make sure it is pre-highlighted. I then create a new layer called Rough Rim Interior to create the rim sticks by free sketching. To only draw one part of the rim stick, I will first start by applying modifiers on top of my layers. Make sure to select the right layer, then go to the Modifier tab on the right panel, and in the Add Modifier drop-down list, select the Mirror modifier to apply it on the layer. Here I choose the Y-plane normal for the plane mirror and I validate to apply it. I add then a new modifier still on the layer, this time a visual pattern modifier, to replicate the stick around the X-axis. I want to duplicate the stick 5 times, so I create 5 instances of it and I validate. You notice there is a little icon reminder that appears on the layer. Now that both modifiers are applied on top of my layer, I will start sketching, so I launch again the sketch creation command and I set the parameters. I choose a pencil brush appearance and the free drawing creation mode. Now I zoom in and I start to sketch one part of the rim stick to see that it is replicated simultaneously thanks to the visual modifiers. Each rough I created is then stored inside the layer, so it will be possible, if needed, to select, hide, or delete any rough I made. If you use, like me, a stylus on your graphic tablet, you notice that the designer gesture is well captured while sketching. It is because of the pressure sensitivity that controls the brush size. The acceleration of the pencil is also visible and allows you to create sketches that convey emotion very quickly. By mixing freehand sketching and rough primitive creation, it is easy to achieve very clean but expressive sketches now directly on the 3D Experience platform. I add a circle with circle primitive and adjust its dimension through the Object Properties panel without leaving the sketch command. I can easily, like that, switch between primitive or free drawing mode. I want to switch to perspective view to appreciate the result. Then I go back to parallel and on the front view with the VNAV widget. With the selection command, I multi-select all the rough to edit their shared properties. Here, I want to reduce their opacity to use the rough as a reference for the next curve creation workflow. I can test different opacity values until I reach the right one. When it's done, I create a new layer to store my curve that I call curve rim shape. And I will reapply the same modifiers, a mirror and a pattern on top of it. I switch to the sketch creation command in the action bar, and this time I will change the tool from rough to trace curve tool, so I will be able this time to draw curves with control points. I change the brush size to 5 mm, and first I will draw the circle with primitive mode again. I continue by drawing other primitive, and in the sketch creation drop-down menu, I launch the Linear Extrusion command, select the middle circle to extrude it, and create a linear extrusion. I manipulate the extrusion lanes with the 3D manipulator. With the transformation command, I use the scaling mode to reduce the size of the extruded circle. Here I want to visualize the extrusion lines, so I go in the View section of the action bar, launch View Mode panel, and activate the visibility of wires. I relaunch the Linear Extrusion on the exterior circle, and I also readjust its length from the 3D viewpoint, and I can validate. From the front viewpoint, I launch the sketch creation command again and start by defining the circle primitive, still with trace curve tool. Then I switch to the freehand drawing mode in the toolbar to create the final curves of the rim sticks in reference of my previous rough. When I release the stylus, you see that the result is recalculated to propose a curve close to my gesture, but with a limited number of control points. In the Object Properties panel, I am also able to edit the number of control points of my trace, and when I position my stylus on the slider, I have a preview of the point repartition in the 3D view. I can drag the slider to add point or enter a precise number. If I switch to Transformation command and select the Vertex Selection filter in the option bar, I will be able to manipulate my curves. I change the transformation mode from scaling to translation, and I manipulate the point of the curve with implicit selection. It means that I don't have to select the vertex I want to move, but I just need to be close enough with the gesture-based robot to see the pre-highlighted vertex and move it. If I hit the Alt key, I move the vertex in two directions on the YZ plane. To have more control on the curve, I will add some extra control point by switching to selection and changing the trace point value from 5 to 6 points. I then go back to Transformation command and I continue to manipulate the curve. When I'm satisfied with the curve shape, I go back to Sketch Creation command and create another curve. I change its control point number again and manipulate it as well. To create the complete rim concept, I simply continue to alternate between curve creation and manipulation. The fact that I applied two visual modifiers previously on top of the layer helps me to gain a lot of time by only sketching one part of the rim and see directly the complete rim updating without requiring any interactions. After creating all the curves, I can hide the two layers that contain the reference rough. Until now, I created curves by drawing them on a 2D plane support. and I want to transform this curve network into a 3D dimension sketch. To do that, I will use the transform command to manipulate each curve into the X direction and give volume to the full sketch. I start by moving the center circle and its linear extrusion with transform command and the object selection filter activated. With translation mode, I simply move the group of curves on X direction with the gesture-based robot and change the point of view to see where they end up. I can readjust its position in space compared to the rest of the sketch easily. For the rim stick, I first want to isolate two curves for easier edition. So I select both curves with the selection command and launch again the transform command. I need to manipulate only one portion of the curve, not the complete curve, so I switch to vertex selection filter, and this time I see the vertex of the curves. With multi-selection activated with the Shift key, I can select the upper group of vertices and move them in the depth with the gesture-based robot in translation mode. I simply alternate between multi-selection and translation while navigating to have a better point of view. For multi-selection, I am now working in explicit selection. You can see the vertices selected and it's possible to move them from the distance. I now change the isolated curves with selection command and move the new ones in reference to the previous one. If I want to go back to implicit selection, I simply need to click one time in space to empty the selection. Like that, you are now able to very quickly manipulate the control points with implicit selection. In the next release, the snapping between extremities will enhance a lot this particular workflow that can take some time when trying to connect different curves extremity together and create a closed network. The next step is to create surfaces from my curve network. For that, I need to make sure I have all the curves to generate the surfaces. I start by hiding the visual modifiers that are applied on top of my layer to keep only the real curves. I need to edit the circle primitive to only keep an arc that will be needed to create the inner part of the rim. To do that, I simply select the complete circle and I change the angle opening from 360 degrees to 340 degrees, for example. I also change the reference, which is the starting point of the arc, to get it closer to the rest of the curve network. To do that, I use the slider in the Object Property panel and validate visually in the 3D view the new position. I validate also by showing again the visual modifiers and check the repetition. I need another arc, so I launch the sketch creation command and create a new circle primitive at the same size, but this time I edit directly its angle with aperture and reference value at the creation stage. Now I create a new layer to store the surfaces I will create from the 3D sketch network that I call Surface Creation. In the action bar, I launch the Shape from Curve command and select in the 3D view the first two curves that I want to fill by holding Ctrl key. Through the Object Properties panel, I access the surface properties as number of sections in both directions, and I try to find the best compromise by simplifying the surface without changing too much the result compared to the original curve shape. I then validate and I launch another shape from curve operation. I make sure that the topology of each surfaces are the same to be able to merge the surfaces together afterward. To have a better visibility of the new surfaces I just created, I change the ambience with right-click in the 3D space to the indoor ambience. I continue to fill the network of curves until I have the complete shape. As for the rough and the curves before, I apply again the same type of modifiers on top of this layer that contain surfaces, a mirror and a pattern to create the repetition of the surfaces this time. Then I want to fill the exterior shape of the rim, again with the Shape from Curve functionality. To do that, I select both exterior circle primitive. When the net surface is created, I will use the Mesh Edition command from the action bar. Here, I use the Extrude Edge operation in the drop-down menu with the Edge Selection filter activated. I hit the Alt key to activate the edge loop propagation, select the complete edge loop and extrude it. From the current operation panel on the top right, I change the extrusion type from directional to angular. I switch to the front viewpoint with the VNAV widget, and I adjust the length of the extrusion in context of the previous curves. With the transform command, I select again the internal edge loop to change its weight or crease from smooth to sharp with a value of 100%. For the center part of the rim, I create a net surface again and switch to Mesh Edition to extrude the edge loop. I change the extrusion angle and length with the 3D manipulator in the 3D view. I then use the transform command to translate, add weight, and scale down some edges. I use a cylindrical surface as a reference to transform the rim stick surface shape. I start by selecting the surface to isolate it while I am modeling it. With Transform command, the Vertex Selection filter activated and the Translation mode, I move the vertices to match both surfaces together. With Transform command, I refine the resulted surface for the stick by manipulating each vertex to make it fit better to the original curves. With the gesture-based robot and the Alt key pressed, it is easy to manipulate vertices from the distance for quick modeling operation. I refine as well the inner surface depth with translation in the X direction only. Even if I manipulate the surfaces with its base mesh, there is still associativity between the original curves and the surfaces created from it. I am able to modify the curve shape and the surface will still be updated to follow the modifications. Here I start to have a lot of objects in the 3D view, so I use the object filter located on the left of the option bar to filter selection only on curves in this case. When I go back into transformation command, only the control point of the curves are visible, which prevents me to use or edit the base mesh of the surfaces. When I move the control point of the curves, you notice the surfaces are updated as well when I release the mouse. With multi-selection, I am able to move a group of curves at the same time for larger modification. It is a very useful workflow for quick shape exploration to see directly the impact on the whole object. I continue to explore ideas and to refine the overall shape. Here I like the fact that with the visual modifiers, it is the complete rim concept which is updating with very great performances. For design researches, it is very convenient to create hybrid models, mixing curves and surfaces, because you can explore variants and ideas very quickly. When it's done, I will remove the object filter on curve and start to refine the subdivision surfaces with Mesh Edition command. Once I use topological edition, the link between curves and surfaces is broken, so make sure to do it only at the end of the process. The edge selection filter is on, and I select the Extrude Edge operation in the drop-down menu. This time, I only click the edge on the side and change the lens extrusion with a 3D manipulator. I switch to Transform command and change to Vertex Selection Filter to reposition vertices and create a nice transition. I add another edge loop to have more control on this particular area and follow the original sketch intent. I zoom out to visualize the overall result at the end. I choose to remove the center geometry because I want to create it otherwise. With the Mesh Edition command, the Edge Selection Filter on, I want to extrude the edge extremity. I use the propagation with the Alt key pressed, but I need first to change the propagation mode to linear propagation. It will propagate the selection until reaching a vertex with weights. When the edge is extruded, I can go back to Transform command to move the vertices and make it match visually to the circle curve. You noticed in this training that I constantly switch between Transform and Mesh Refine command from the action bar. It takes a lot of time, so it is also possible to use some keyboard shortcut, for example the space key to enter in transformation mode. Try to use these shortcuts to accelerate your workflow. All the shortcuts are available in the shortcut dialog located in the action bar or under the H shortcut. In the next step, I will use the Mesh Refine command to assemble the different surfaces all together. I use the merge operation available when the edge selection filter is activated, and I select both edge extremities on the two surfaces I want to merge together with the Alt key pressed to propagate and the Control key. The surfaces are merged together and I can choose between two merging options. By default, it will add an intermediate surface, and if I deactivate the Added Faces option in the current operation panel, it will join both surfaces together. I select the new internal edge and add some weight with Sharp option. I redo the same operation for the two other surfaces. For the rest of the merging operation, I hide the layer that contains the curve network to have a better visibility on the surfaces. Then I select the surface I want to merge to isolate them and launch the Mesh Refine command again. Here I use the linear propagation to select both edge lines to merge together. I add some weight as well with the Transform command. I finish by merging the two last parts together to form the final rim stick. When looking at the base mesh, I want to simplify the result to be able to sculpt easily the shape afterward. With the Mesh Refine command and the Edge Selection Filter, I use the Remove Loop operation to clean the base mesh by removing 3 internal edge loops with a simple click on each. With the transform command and vertex selection filter, I modify a little the shape. I change the thickness of the stick. There is a missing part at the junction of the rim stick. I use the extrude edge operation to create the missing patch, adjust its length and the vertex position. I merge the last patch together and finish by harmonizing the area by adding weight. With vertices multi-selection, I sculpt locally the sticks and I can easily explore rim variants like that. With the snapping between vertices, I clean also the base mesh. I activate it by pressing the Shift key while I am moving with the gesture based on one direction. You see that the cursor takes the shape of a little target to select the snapping target in the 3D view. Once the surface is cleaned, I can add a new edge loop with the Mesh Refine command to refine the inner part between sticks. In the next releases to come, I will have a new modifier to be able to merge the different parts of my rim with a G2 continuity, and like that to be able to finalize properly the full rim shape. But today, if I want to clean it and create a nice junction, I will need to dump the mirror and pattern modifier to be able to merge all the parts together manually. But here I want to still be able to edit easily this first concept, so I will keep it like that. Just a quick summary of the entire steps we went through to obtain this nice result. First, I started with the rough sketching. It was the reference to build the complete set of curve network and then to create all the surfaces relying on these curves. To display my concept, I create a kind of a mix between the original curves and the final shape altogether. So I lowered down the opacity of the surface to 70% to better appreciate the mix between both. It is now the end of this first deep dive training on Creative Design Experience new application. Today we focused on the workflow to create a car rim concept starting from 3D sketching to surface creation. I hope you liked it and were able to produce as well some nice rim concept design.